The life and early years of Isaac Newton. On December 24, 1642, his mother Hannah went into labor. An hour or two after midnight, on Christmas morning, December 25, 1642, baby Newton was born prematurely at Woolsthorpe, near Grantham, England. Newton was a very weak child and was not expected to survive his first days. The name Isaac comes from the prophet called Isḥāq in the Bible and the Qur'an. According to the belief, when God announced that they would have a child, Prophet Abraham, who was very old, and his wife Sāre, who had never had children, laughed at the good news. God therefore decreed that the child's name should be Isaac, which means to laugh. When Newton was 4 years old, his mother married a rich clergyman and moved in with her new husband. His mother left Newton with his grandmother, and Newton stayed with his grandmother for 7 years. This traumatic situation caused Newton to hate his family, and especially his stepfather. Between the ages of 12 and 17, Newton lived in the home of William, an apothecary, where he became fascinated with both alchemy and the apothecary's stepdaughter, Mrs. Storey. When her husband died 7 years later, her mother returned with a large inheritance. At the age of 12, he began his education at King's School in Grantham, graduating in 1661. His mother took him out of school for a while to become a farmer, but Newton was not interested in farm work. While his mother thought Newton was doing farm work, he was actually constantly studying the sky and the stars, reading books, and taking notes. Eventually, he convinced his mother that he should go to school and prepare for university, so he went back to school. At the age of 19, he became engaged to Mrs. Storey, the stepdaughter of William the apothecary, but their relationship ended due to Newton's busy studies. Newton never married later in life, and no other relationships are known. He is said to remember only. Isaac Newton's years at Cambridge. Newton entered Trinity College, Cambridge in 1661 as a sizar, meaning that he worked and studied at the same time. At Cambridge, the theories of Copernicus and Kepler were ignored, Galileo's work was not recognized, and Aristotelian philosophy dominated the atmosphere. Newton studied algebra, geometry, and trigonometry for 3 years and learned Latin and ancient Greek. He was also introduced to the works of Galileo and Kepler during this period and was highly influenced by them. He also read the philosophical works of Descartes, Gassendi, Hobbes, and especially Boyle. At the beginning of his notebook, Questiones Quaedam Philosophicae, some philosophical questions, in which he wrote down his ideas, Newton wrote the following note in Latin: "Plato is my friend, Aristotle my friend, but my best friend is truth." During his years at Cambridge, Newton did not stand out among his fellow students as an achiever, and his genius was demonstrated in the 2 years he spent on his own farm due to a plague outbreak. Isaac Newton and his work on the farm. In August 1665, Trinity College in Cambridge was closed due to the plague outbreak in London, and Newton stayed at his farm in the town of Woolsthorpe until March 1667. These 2 years on the farm were very productive, and he began to think about gravity during this period. His work on the farm also laid the foundation for differential and integral calculations. He combined the methods that had been used in the past, such as finding the area, arc length, and tangent, with differential calculations. In a dark room on the farm, he created a spectrum of light by shining sunlight through a prism and realized that white light was not a unit by itself. Continuing such experiments, it was time again for Isḥāq to go to university. Isaac Newton's return to Cambridge in 1667. Newton returned to Cambridge when the university reopened, and 2 years later became professor of mathematics. He stayed in Cambridge for about 30 years, talking to other scientists through letters and continuing to work alone. During these years, he prepared and completed his greatest work, Principia. As a result of his experiments with light on his farm, he realized that lensed telescopes created imperfections, so he developed a reflecting telescope. In 1668, he attracted the attention of the scientific world with this telescope and became a member of the Royal Society in 1672. Principia, the work of Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton published Philosophia Naturalis, Principia Mathematica, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, in Latin, one of the most important scientific works in world history. In the book, he used geometry to prove the law of universal gravitation and explained that bodies attract each other in direct proportion to their mass and in inverse proportion to their distance. The book is divided into three main parts by Newton. In the first part, he praises Galileo's experiments and mathematically proves Kepler's laws. In this chapter, he explained the Newtonian laws of motion, as he called them. In the second part, he analyzed the motion in a fluid and made suggestions for the best ship design. In this part, his mathematical analysis of wave motions attracted attention. Isaac Newton's years in London and his death in 1696, Newton was offered the directorship of the Royal Mint, which he accepted and moved to London. He took this job very seriously and started a great fight against counterfeit coins in particular. Newton loved life in London and did not want to be too interested in academic studies anymore. He was appointed head of the Royal Society in 1703 and remained in this position until his death. He was knighted in 1705. In 1706, he was elected president of the Royal Society. In 1708, he was awarded the title of Sir by Queen Anne. Isaac Newton died on March 31, 1727, at the age of 84, and was buried in Westminster Abbey.